Hello and welcome to another Dragonstorm Studios video. And today we're going to draw gemstones. Now, we could very easily take just about any shape really, and from each corner of that shape, create a line segment toward the middle of the shape, connect the ends of those line segments together, and we can have ourselves something that resembles a gem with facets. And that's what really makes the gem, look as if it was a cut stone. So by having these faceted sides, it just looks, for lack of a better word, gemmy. Now, that all on its own doesn't look bad. You can add some shading to it as well, and you can go really wild with the shapes. But in saying that, I think we can do a little bit better. So I've drawn a circle here, tracing a circle. I tried to find roughly where the midpoint is. I took a couple attempts to do so because it is a little bit tricky unless you're using a compass perhaps. So I'm going to create a diameter which is horizontal and a diameter which is vertical. And again, nice and light because I won't be able to erase these in case I do make mistakes. Using that midpoint, I'm then going to create two diagonals going through. And again, trying to keep these as even as you can, just to give yourself some places for those facets to go, a starting point for them. Once you've got that, we're going to go with those diagonals to try and create a square in the middle of our circle. And again, nice and light, just to make sure it all lines up before we move on to the next portion. And again, if you ever have trouble making straight lines, just align the ruler up with the edge of the paper. I find that's a really good trick to ensure that your lines are straight. So we're a little bit off, it looks like, but as long as we get that square in there, we're good. And I'm just going to adjust because I think it's just the diagonal which is off a bit. So let's just put a line there. Okay, I think we're good to go. I'm then going to erase that square line slightly so I can still make out a little bit of where the square is, and I'm going to adjust those lines so they're curved. They're a bit more circular as opposed to square. So just using those points that I'd made to create slight bulges in where the square is. And this is important because very often the facet that's facing you is going to be, because the gemstone is circular, that facet is going to be circular as well. All right. And then I'm going to make a diamond shape using the horizontal and vertical lines that I drawn. So we want that about the same distance. So about there, about there. And again, these ones can be a little bit kind of hit and miss. These are a bit more angular. But we start seeing the facets taking shape here of a gemstone. And it is a bit tricky, it is a bit time consuming to set this up, but the end result will look amazing. It actually, at the moment, reminds me of one of those spiral designs of a toy I had back when I was a kid. Spirograph, I think it was called. It was pretty neat. But we can kind of see that gemstone starting to take shape. I'm then going to go for more triangular shapes here on the edges. So all over, all I've been doing is going back and forth, trying to create these repeated patterns to give it that faceted sort of look. And some are larger, some are smaller. I didn't take a lot of time to worry about which one was where and which size was being done. Just kind of keeping them so that they are the same on both sides. They're consistent in their angles and shapes. And you get this wonderful kind of faceted pattern as our end result. All right, so I'm going to start darkening some of them in. I'm just being aware of where I want my light source to be. Let's say, just for the sake of interest, our light source is over here this time, just to keep things different. And being in mind of where the light source is, it'll help me determine which will be dark and which will be lighter. So here I've taken the 2B pencil and I've just gone over the sides of the gemstone farthest away from the light source. I've just kind of spot picked the facets I figured would be farthest away from the light source. So you've got just some spot filling here and there. It almost reminds me of one of those adult coloring books or a stained glass window at this point. You're just kind of filling in, keeping your pencil as sharp as possible to make sure that they still look triangular, these bits you're filling in. I'm then going to move from my 2B to a regular HB pencil, and at that point I'm going to keep filling in. So appearing a little bit disco ballish at the moment, but I'm getting rid of any of the guide lines I don't need anymore. So the original square in the middle, to which I added the curve, I can get rid of. The curve stays, the square disappears. I'm leaving the other lines in the middle lightly there because I want to have some shine effects. But the point at this stage of the game is that it looks a bit like maybe a disco ball. Not a gem yet, but way better than it did even just, a minute or two ago in terms of video time. So the more you put into it, the better it's going to look. So I'll keep working away on that, and then we'll see how that ends up looking. As we start to fill in those different facets, we really have to think about that value scale, like we talked about before, trying to get that really subtle distinction between the medium tones in particular. Also, if you find that maybe some of your facets are a little bit uneven, if you just take your blending stomp to it and just delicately go over, almost no pressure on the stomp, you'll be able to blend in the entire facet to look a bit more consistent, because it is hard to keep that consistent pressure on the pencil. I've also outlined two areas which I think anyways the light's going to hit pretty directly on my gem. From the pictures I've looked at online, you often do get at least a couple of facets which are just pure white because the light's hitting them directly. So I think it's those two which are kind of showing the depth away from that central square. I'm also going to switch at this point to a 2H pencil, and that just allows for a much lighter application. And last but not least, because a gemstone is at least partially translucent, so we can kind of see other facets within and beyond the gemstone, I'm just going to carefully, again, 2H pencil, just darken in some of the lighter areas where you can see some other facets through them. And then that will just create a bit more sense of depth here and there, a bit more variety within the facets themselves. I've also taken the time to erase a little bit here and there, just to create some more reflections within those individual facets. So I'll do a little bit more of that, just here and there. I don't want too much of it, I don't want it to be too apparent, but it's a very subtle thing, which just gives it a bit more reality. I'm also, if I have a light source over here, just going to add a shadow being cast by that gemstone here away from the stone. So it's got a sense of solidity to it. And I'm going to use my blending stomp just to go over this area. I don't want it too dark. And then that will help just finish off the picture, give it a bit more of a professional feel to it, a bit more realistic feel to it. So we'll see how that then turns out. And as a final touch, just before we end off today, you are going to end up with just a little bit of eraser junk left over. So I'm just going to take my eraser and just lightly dab to pick up as many of those little stray eraser bits as I can. If I was to try to wipe them away right now, especially right here, I would probably end up smudging. So within the actual gemstone, just try and pick up as many of those as you can without making a mess, and you have yourself a beautiful gemstone. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that video. Give it a try yourself, see how it turns out, and we'll see you next time.